listening to Shop Talk with your host, Kevin Tates. Brought to you by Eastwood Tools. Everything you need to do the job right.
Hey guys, you're listening to Shop Talk. I'm your host, Kevin Tates, and as always, we are brought to you by the Eastwood Company. Do the job right with Eastwood. Well, one of the fun things that I get to do with what it is that I do, which I haven't really even figured out exactly what I do anymore, but is I get to go to the SEMA convention. And at SEMA, on the floor of SEMA, SEMA is the best of the best. It's the hot rod mecca. It is eye candy to the nth degree. And there was a vehicle on the floor at the Mr. Gasket booth that it didn't just turn heads, it snapped necks. The vehicle is called Kosmic Outcast, and really cool. I thought it was a restored 50s custom, but Kosmic Outcast is actually a new creation. And we are talking to the cats that created it from HRCC, better known as Hot Rod Chassis and Cycle. We've got Chad Hill and Kevin Tully on the phone. Hey, guys, how are you?
Hey, Kevin. Hey, how you doing, man?
Doing great. Well, thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to chat with us here in Shop Talk. How's the weather up in the Illinois area?
It's nice today. It's a balmy 70 degrees and sunshine.
That's cool. My wife and I were up there a couple of weekends ago and had a great time in Chicago and did some stuff downtown. Went to a good concert, and it was just a quickie. But I really dig that area. Never spent much time other than in O'Hare, but it was cool to see some of the countryside and actually say that I put my feet down in Chicago. So a couple of things that I want to ask, and I'll get right to it. Obviously, Kosmic Outcast, and I encourage people that are listening to go on the website, go to the HRCC website, and look at this car. If you haven't seen it already in magazines and on Power Block or Power Nation, it's an amazing car. You guys obviously have deep roots in traditional hot rodding. Where did the inspiration for this car come?
You know, as a kid, Chad and I both built model cars and went to car shows and read the magazines, and of course, you know, with Ed Ross influence and Sam Barris, and you know, we watched the Monkees and Batman, and you know, as a little kid, all those crazy creation cars are the ones that you wanted to really go look at because they were so different. So the Weirdos models, and you know, there's a lot of different avenues. I have a really deep interest in late 50s, early 60s science fiction, you know, with everything with lightning holes and antennas and all the images of what the future would look like from them. You know, so there's a lot of influences there, but I would have to say all the early 60s Ed Roth cars for me were the biggest influence.
Well, I think that's true for a lot of us, and, you know, I don't know about you guys, but I always had Hot Wheels cars when I was a kid, and, you know, the Beatnik Bandit and the Roth cars and the Orbitrons, and just awesome, out-of-the-box thinking. So it's cool that you guys are drawing inspiration from truly masters and pop culture styling that's just still valid and current to this day.
Yeah, we have a deep love and respect for the heritage of, you know, all the builders that came before us. It's really a hallmark of our style. You know, when we pick a period for a car, we pick a year, and nothing will be on the car that's newer than that. And that's the case with the Kosmic Outcast, too. There's 22 different cars in the Outcast, and, you know, there's nothing newer car part-wise on there than 64.
That's crazy. And it started out as a pickup truck, didn't it?
Yeah, 44 pickup truck.
Wow, man. Beautiful work, outstanding work. I've seen the car up close, and, of course, I talked to Kevin at the Power Nation studios. And give our listeners and me a little bit of background on how the company started, and then maybe follow up with what the function is of both of you guys in the company.
So the company started out as I had moved to Chicago after I got out of the service, and I worked for a few other builders, and I had done a race car for a private owner who had kind of a car collection, and at one point he came to me when I was working on his car and said, "Why don't you have your own shop?" And I said, "Well, you know, I never really thought about that." And of course, it costs a lot of money to do that kind of thing. And he's kind of a local guy who I think when he identifies talent, he
gives people the ability to get a company going, and then at one point when he decides that the company is just far enough along, some of the companies I know that he's helped start, he's just put them off on their own, and other companies, another person will step in and take his place as a partner, and that's how it rolled out with Chad and I. There was a point where the company was going along at a pretty good clip pretty early on, and in its infancy. And Chad and I were having a beer one night, and we got to talking about partnering together. And for me, it was a much better opportunity because at the time my old partner was really kind of silent, and I was doing all the marketing and branding too, and I don't have a lot of experience in that. And Chad has now 22 years experience in doing that. So it was a really good pairing, especially with Chad having the same background that I had, growing up around cars and at the racetrack and car shows and things like that. We both understood the market we were getting into, and there weren't any real full-on traditional hot rod shops. There were a lot of shops that did a little bit of everything, and we felt that with the at the time current resurgence of traditional hot rodding, that since there wasn't a shop like that in Chicago, that's where the focus should be, is building only 64 and earlier traditional hot rods and customs. And we still did race cars of pretty much any era, but we were just kind of silent about that. If we did a roll cage or put ladder bars in or an engine plate or something like that, just some, fiberglass hood mounting or something like that, we just kind of let that be kind of the silent end of the business.
Right. Well, Chad, what Kevin said you... I'm sorry, go ahead. We got a bit of a time lag going on, so go ahead and start with that.
Okay. The car club that we're both in now, at the time I was a member of, and we had found Hot Rod Chassis through a friend of ours, and we started hanging out and, just going after hours and drinking beer, and we all became friends. And, I could see that Kevin needed help with the advertising and the marketing, so I started doing some ads for him for the local paper, and, one thing led to another, and he asked me one day if I'd ever thought of owning a hot rod shop. And I said, well, no. So he made his case that, we should partner up together, that we'd make a good team with my marketing and branding abilities and his skill as a fabricator, that we could really make something of it. And, honestly, we thought that we could do some good things as a team, but I don't think either one of us would have ever dreamed we'd be where we are right now. And it's pretty exciting. It's a really exciting time for us right now.
Well, you guys have been in the spotlight for quite a while. One of the first cars that I saw that was associated with you guys was that GTO, the Raybestos project car, the GTO R. And obviously, like you're partnering with Advanced Plating, and it's interesting how small the world is. It's a huge industry, but it's a small community of people that are really just outstanding craftsmen, and you guys are certainly part of that. To me, it's part of just kind of putting your head down and nose to the grindstone, and with your best possible energy forward. It just seems like the harder you work, the more stuff kind of comes back around. And it's no accident that you guys are doing these high-end builds and beautiful workmanship. But what else do you attribute your success to? Is it all marketing? Is it all craftsmanship? Or is it a mix of both?
I'd have to say that, I think anybody that has become notable in the industry or in the public eye, there's so many factors that go on. A pretty major one, I have to think, is the relationships that you develop. But in order to develop those relationships, you have to be producing a product that people want to see. And so
you got to get their attention.
Yeah, that goes back to it really isn't just Chad and I at the shop. You know, over the years we've had several employees, and people don't realize in this industry that as shop owners, you get guys that come in and work for you, and they're very talented, and eventually they want to do the same thing that we did, which is go out on their own and start their own shop. So you end up losing them and have to find another person. And there's not a ton of craftsmen in the industry that you have to pull from, or people that want to get into the industry. You would think that there would be with the big schools, but like any big school that, has thousands of people go through it a year, you end up with a handful that really are the talented people, or have the drive, or the work ethic, or whatever.
And that are a good fit to what you're trying to do. And on the front page of your website, it says we're hiring. Are you guys actually hiring?
Well, we are almost constantly looking for new people because we're a growing company. But for every 100 guys that we get that apply to the shop, you may only have 2 or 3 that you really are interested in. And it's not because those others don't have the talent. It's that to do the work that we do in our shop, the person has to have the ability to see the design elements that we like putting in our projects, and be able to understand what we're trying to do. And they also have to fit into the team. We're a very family-oriented team shop. We don't have employees that are just a paycheck where they come in at 7 and go home at 3. We all work together so that each phase of a build doesn't become, oh my God, what did the guy that worked on this before me do? Everybody works very closely so that it's a smooth flowing function to get to the end.
Well, you got to have a shared vision when you're doing concept vehicles, and basically what you're saying is that everybody is on the same page, and it's kind of like you're developing a community, if I'm understanding you right.
It is, and that community really extends beyond just the employees at Hot Rod Chassis, out into the industry. We work with Jesse Powell at Aeromotive, and we work with Jeff Anderson at Mosier, and EJ and Rodney and Brett down at Ride Tech, and Jason over at Pete and Jake's. We work with a myriad of companies. We try to keep the companies to be American companies that produce the parts here in America. We have a relationship with guys for building hot rods, and we have a relationship with guys for building the Skunk Works cars. That's our new racing division that focuses on what is known as pro touring, but is quickly becoming known as ultimate street cars.
Yeah.
So and some of those are companies that cross into both divisions of our company. Like Painless Wiring. John Althouse helps us, and we use Painless exclusively as our wiring provider. And of course, we can use those in a Hot Rod Chassis car or in a Skunk Works race car.
Right.
But they really are part of our company, too, in the aspect that when we talk to them, it has to fit their brand as well, if they're going to be on board with us and be able to ultimately use the marketing, use our project as a marketing tool for their own company. So it sounds very complex, and I guess it probably is, but when you have the relationships that we do, and we're always, of course, looking for new ones as new products are developed at the various manufacturers, we like them to be able to use what we do as marketing and vice versa. So they're really kind of involved in the projects.
Well, in order to get their products represented properly, I mean, I've gone down that road multiple times to where you have to do justice to the products that you're putting on the car, in the sense that they have to be integral to the project, they have to make sense, and keep the brand pure. So it's kind of a delicate dance, and it seems like you guys do that very well, particularly with Ray Bestis. Explain the relationship with that company. It's obviously a notable company, but you guys are partnering up on another vehicle, this Valiant. So talk to me a little bit about Ray Bestis and what you guys are doing with them.
Well, Ray Bestis, after the GTO program, we're pretty loyal to our partners. Once we find somebody that we like, we tend to stick with them. And, we had a really good relationship with Ray Bestis, and so we wanted to go back to them and try to put together a brake package that would come from their catalog, but still be able to do all of the autocross and Trans Am style races. So they worked with us. Kevin designed a system to use off-the-shelf components, and that's kind of where we're at with that.
Yeah. Well, talk to me about the Valiant. I love those cars. I love that body. That's what, a 64?
Yes. We were at
what kind of power? What kind of details?
Well, we were at Good Guys Columbus last year. And I was watching autocross, and every car that went around the course was Camaro, Nova, Nova, Camaro, Nova, Chevelle, Mustang, Nova, Camaro, Nova, Camaro.
Yeah.
And that's cool. I'm a Chevy guy, but, there weren't any Mopar cars out there. So I thought, as a brand, how can we kind of rekindle that love we had for that style from the GTO? How can we get back into that? And we had the Valiant sitting in the back of the shop, just collecting dust. So I said to Kevin, why don't we build the Valiant as a road racing car? So he looked at me kind of funny and said, okay. So by Sunday, we started going around to some of our friends at the various brands that we partner with, and we garnered a few build partners, that day, and it just kind of snowballed. We've got 45 build partners on that car. This is really a function of our relationship that we developed with these brands, because when you partner with Hot Rod Chassis on a build like that, you get us as brand ambassadors for your brand. And I think that's important because, like I mentioned before, we're loyal to our suppliers, and they have a product that can stand up to the abuse that Kevin dishes out to them, then we'll keep them, and we'll tell everybody on the planet about them.
Cool. Well, that's the best endorsement possible. You got to beat the heck out of it, and if it lives, then you just tell people about it, right?
Yeah, the nice thing about Chad and I have had quite a few discussions lately about what we can do for the people who build partner with us on a car. And so many of the suppliers and brands that we deal with will talk about how normally they'll build partner on a car that may be going to SEMA, or maybe have a magazine article written on it, and they'll provide a product, and it goes on the car, and the print magazines are still wonderful to read, out on the porch with a cup of coffee or something like that, but you might get your product in one photograph or mentioned in one paragraph, and that's almost kind of the end of it. And so when we originally started in on the GTO-R project, we thought, well, what can we do to really go above and beyond what we are hearing all of these build partners tell us? And it was a pretty common story. So we said, well, we'll offer, if you're going to be at a show that we're going to be at, we'll more than happily bring the car, and you can have it in your booth, and then you don't have to bring a car from home or source one from the local show or from the local populace. That may not be the same high quality that a company would want to have in their booth to represent their brand. And so we started doing that, and we offered to provide testimonial videos about how the product was working on the car. And none of these things are, other than that they provide a part for the car and a banner or some T-shirts or something. A lot of times they're not getting a corporate review of a part from someone that works for a magazine rather than the person that's actually, utilizing it. And so we had that going for us. And then, we had the GTOR at the Nitto Tire booth down at Joliet, and Greg Sensor was there from Nitto Tire, and we got to talking. And at one point, there were some customers in his booth, and he was busy talking to some guys, and one of the, there's two other people that were working for Nitto were talking to some guys, and I saw someone standing there waiting to talk for what seemed like a long time. And so I wandered over and I said, hey, can I help you with anything? And he said, well, I wanted to talk about the NT05 Nittos. And I said, oh, I can talk to you about those. So I started talking to the guy and telling him, all about everything I knew about the tires and the sizes that he could get them in and the tread wear and how they handled. And he suddenly looked at my shirt and said, well, you don't work for Nitto. I said, well, not really, but they sponsor my car. And I just happen to know about your tires. And Greg wandered over and stood there listening to me. And when the guy walked away, he goes, wow, you should do this all the time. So it ended up being that as we took the cars to the different booths before we would go, I would look up not just the product that we had used, but I would look up the other products that the company might offer, like at the Tremec booth, Nate Tovey knows that, from Tremec knows that if we have a car in their booth and I'm standing there, he really doesn't have a problem with me talking to one of the customers about their T56 Magnums or the TKO 600s because I know what cars fit.
Yeah, you can speak the language, and that's I think that's really smart marketing, and it's not buying banner ads, and it's not getting TV commercials produced. That's just your sneakers on the pavement type of marketing that I'm sure has served you guys very well. So well done with that. You've got some great partners, and obviously they appreciate what you do.
Yeah, we've enjoyed a really good relationship with a number of big companies, and it's kind of funny because we've gone to other companies where we find they have a new product, or we're building a project where they have a product we might not have used before, but that it fits the build, so we'll go to them and start talking to them. And when it comes down to how do we get to your part on our car, we've had a couple of them, and Chad and I are usually shocked when it happens because we don't really think of ourselves as being any kind of big shots. We're kind of a little hot rod shop from the Midwest. And when somebody from a company you've never dealt with looks at you and says, "Oh yeah, I know about you guys. I see all your cars all the time, and I've talked to so and so from another company, and they say you're really good to deal with."
Right.
You kind of don't expect that, You don't ever expect to talk to someone new and have your reputation precede you, because we kind of don't really think of ourselves in that manner,
Right. Well, here's the deal, and you guys know this, but your reputation precedes you, whether it's a good reputation or whether it's a dubious reputation. So the fact that you're putting your best foot forward is, money where your mouth is, and people listening. By the way, we're talking with Kevin Tully and Chad Hill from Hot Rod Chassis and Cycle in Addison, Illinois. And these guys are outstanding craftsmen, but they also back up their craftsmanship with customer service, not only to the customers, but to the business partners around them. And it's just so important, especially with an economy the way it is. And it's another question I wanted to get to with you guys, and I'm sorry for stepping on your words, Kevin, but I wanted to ask you this. You guys are in the Illinois area. There is a scene up there. There's some people that I know. Jim Strange comes from there. I know Voodoo Larry, he's from up in that area. There is a scene up there. How did the downturn in the economy affect your shop, and are things coming back? Are people starting to spend money? What's the climate like up in your area?
You could see the downturn like any industry that has a very popular period. With the resurgence of traditional hot rods, say 15 years ago or even 20 years ago when it began, it grew and grew and grew, and everybody and their brother started looking at each other at the dinner table, saying, or over a beer, saying, we should open a shop. And pretty soon you get a pretty dense population of little shops. And I don't want to use the cream to the top cliche, but I think the companies that have done good business and have good craftsmanship and good customer service, they're the ones that always survive. And so some of the other shops in the area that we have 2-speed shops that were near us that went out of business about 5 and 6 years ago, respectively. And we kind of stayed. And I don't want to say that we haven't had our lean times, because we have. But we do see not the traditional hot rod market coming back, but any company has to kind of follow the wave of what's trending. And it doesn't mean you have to, if Fast and Furious tuner cars are what's trending, it doesn't mean you have to completely abandon your brand identity and start building Fast and Furious tuner cars. But you do have to kind of keep an eye on what's popular. And with the traditional hot rod market, it was traditional hot rods, skinny tire cars like post-war cars for a while, and then it started to become kind of the later 50s stuff. And it's really a cycle. And it went so far, it was almost like the original progression of those hot rods into the 60s, where it ultimately became everybody going to the drag strip of what they built.
Right.
And we saw that too. The GTO-R was kind of a out of left field deal for us. I mean, we had always been building race cars, and Josh Russell from Ray Bestis knew that, and he knew our quality level, and approached us about building that car. And so we wanted to try and keep a traditional feel and have our own, people to be able to identify the car with our brand. And so the early 60s Trans Am style just kind of fit really well. And, I told several people at the time that we took that car to Ultimate Streetcar Invitational, there were maybe 50 cars there, and not to lean on anybody else's car the wrong way, but out of the 50, the GTO was probably in the nicest 15 or 20 top 20 cars there.
Well, but because face it, it's a car show as well. I mean, there's
Sure.
a contest and there's points given on aesthetics and fit and finish and all that stuff, right?
Right. And so we revisited Ultimate Streetcar as spectators last year, and if the GTO had been there last year, just 2 years after it was finished, out of the 70 or so cars there, it probably would have been in the top 50 nicest cars there. So
right.
The industry has really reacted to that, and I've made the comparison that the Ultimate Streetcar Association today is gathering speed and becoming as popular as drag racing started to become in like 1958 or 59. It's really becoming a fervor. And
well, what I like about it is that not only are there outstanding cars like the Ray Bestis GTO-R, but there are also vehicles that are absolutely just function, and they're well built. A lot of the guys that build them actually own them, and there's some home built stuff. There's the whole gamut, but the premise is just like you call it. It's an ultimate street car that does many things very, very well. And I'm personally so happy to see the trend going towards that, rather than everybody does a cliche trailer queen jokes and all that kind of stuff. No oil in the crankcase and blah blah blah. I love seeing cars that are driven, and that facet of the hobby, I think, is, or the industry rather, is very encouraging to me. And obviously, you guys feel the same way, and in some sense are leading the charge on, a functional vehicle that also looks fantastic. And I don't know, that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you guys, is because you do it so well, and you do it all well.
Well, thank you. You know, one of the things that we really prided ourselves on the GTO was a 700 horsepower LSX 454 with a Hillborn stack injector and a T56. And, you know, Kevin drove it all the way to Watkins Glen and got 18 miles a gallon.
I love it.
You know, he tooled around all weekend and then drove it home. You know, so that's something that's going to be paramount in our style of car. You know, particularly the Valiant that we're building. It's got a all-aluminum Indy max wedge with a Hillborn stack injector. We're building a 67 Chevelle 300 Trans Am style car, again with the LSX 454, the Hillborn. But that car is going to be the only other way to describe that car is it's going to be the baddest Chevelle on the planet.
That's cool.
With our traditional hot rods, you know, it's funny you mentioned the trailer queen thing because, you know, hot rod chassis has never been known as the fastest to build a car or the cheapest to build a car. We're not one of the most expensive either, and we don't take, you know, a decade to build a car. But we really try to pay attention to all the details, and ultimately we're trying to blend a traditional aesthetic, whether it be traditional hot rodding or a vintage Trans Am looking car, with modern reliability to where you can drive it anywhere you want. And you know, we built Backseat Betty years ago, which is a Model A with a 325 Dodge Polyblock and a TKO 600, and drove it to Eyes on Design in Detroit and drove it home. And we wanted to carry that into the ultimate street car style cars that we're building, in that we don't want you to have to put the car on a trailer to take it to Road America. We want you to get in it in the garage that morning and drive it to Road America and race the hell out of it all day long, and drive it home, and then be able to drive it to work on Monday. You know, we're not ever going to compete with people like Art Morrison and the Roadster Shop. You know, we're friends with those guys, and they have that product for the home builder that wants to purchase a chassis and a motor from Crate Engine Depot and put it together in the garage. We're not looking to try and compete with those guys. We want the person that has the 64 Studebaker Daytona or the 69.5 Javelin, that wants ultimate street car handling and performance, but there really kind of isn't the bolt-on part for, and they really want a purpose-built car. We want to attract those customers where we can provide the same handling and quality, but in a car that maybe that unique car, so that although we both like the 69 Firebirds and the 67 Chevelles and the 71, you know, AR Cudas, but there's those other standout cars that you want to go to a show. Yeah, you want your car to handle well and you want it to go fast and perform well in the corners, but maybe in the car show aspect, you don't want one of the mainstream cars. You want that that car sits lower and is a unique brand.
Well, a unique brand, and you know, there's, I love the fact, I truly do, I love the fact that you can build a 69 Camaro or a 65 Mustang out of a catalog. And I'm not just talking about sheet metal stuff. You can build that car out of a catalog. It's like Jeep and J.C. Whitney. It's a wonderful thing for the industry and the hobby that's available. But I also love the fact that in the 60s, 50s and 60s in particular, and that's kind of the era that I grew up in, vehicles are instantly recognizable. And things like the Valiant and the GTO, people know what those cars are, and there's individuality and personality that people read and are infused into the designs of those vehicles. And to me, it's important to pay homage to these wonderful designs back in a day when everything wasn't shaped like an M&M or an egg, and you know.
Right on. Well, when we decided, Chad and I had talked about starting a racing division to focus more on the race cars when we were contracted to build the GTOR. And at the time, we just didn't know how the market was going to react to all of that because, you know, the Ultimate Streetcar Invitational had only been going for a couple of years. Although the Pro Touring cars were around, they were still kind of a new thing. And, of course, today the industry, the manufacturing industry reacts much faster to market demand for new parts than it did previously. You know, the Internet has allowed everyone to view many more events and races and see what's trending more across the country in a faster manner than with printed magazines did. And
yeah, absolutely agree.
So at the time, the discussion was there, but we felt that we wanted to see where it was going to go. And the day at Columbus last year that we really kind of got smacked in the face and said, you know, realized that the autocross and the challenge races and the Optima face-offs, those were all growing at a pace that was very quick. Mm-hmm. And so we made the decision to do that, to create a division of our company that would do nothing but race cars. And so in tossing around names, you know, what to call it, we wanted to identify with the Hot Rod Chassis brand and get people to think the way we did with that branding. You know, if you look at the Hot Rod Chassis logo, it evokes an aircraft feel from a past time. And we wanted people to feel that about traditional hot rods. You know, a lot of the traditional hot rodders back in the original days were all aircraft guys, you know, from the manufacturing plant. So they used a lot of that technology in making the speed parts or building their chassis or how the cars were put together. And so in the conversations, we said, well, why don't we call it Skunk Works? Because we want people to identify with Lockheed Skunk Works. You know, Lockheed Skunk Works, and you think about them, they make all the stealth planes, and they have all the futuristic technology today, and it's as we like to say, ultimate technology today. So
yeah. Skunk Works has its own identity as a pop culture phrase, anyways, and it connotates like a secret development shop that's kicking out high tech stuff. At least that's what it means to me. So I think it's an awesome name, especially for the level of craftsmanship that you guys demonstrate.
And it fit because, you know, the racing division was kind of our best kept secret.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
cool.
take the the 67 Chevelle we're building with our original parts group. There aren't really, you know, Bang Shift is covering it, and there's not a ton of articles about it yet. But that car, when people see it, it will look like a 67 Chevelle Trans Am car. But when you start reading the list of components that are in the car, you know, it's getting the LSX 454 with a Hillborn stack injector, with a Moroso dry sump system. That's their very new double rotor dry sump system. And if you're ever at a show with one of their booths and you go over and take your hand and turn one of the original style dry sump pumps and turn one of the new double rotor dry sump pumps, you can feel the torque difference that it takes to turn it is just unbelievably different. It's so easy to turn the new one that it's obvious the parasitic loss is going to be a lot less. And then, you know, you come back to the transmission. It's a Tremec TKO, or I'm sorry, a Tremec Magnum T56. But the difference between the one you can get off the shelf and the one that's going in the Chevelle is the one that's going in the Chevelle is the same Magnum T56, the sequentially shifted version that's in all of the Rolex race cars.
Oh, wow.
You know, that's pretty top of the line. You know, the retail on the transmission is above $20,000. And I'm not saying that to make it sound like we're using some kind of really expensive, impressive part. It's to make people understand that the technology that's in this sequentially shifted 6-speed is right from Rolex Racing.
Yeah. Well, then obviously the rest of the components on the vehicle rise to match that level. So it's got to be an outstanding car from every aspect.
Oh yeah, we're actually we've already gone through the R&D and we're in the manufacturing end of it now. We're coming out with our own independent rear suspension that is not an evolved double A-arm suspension. It's a new design that we're calling an Interceptor that I think is really going to make people think about independent rear suspensions in a different manner, and the Chevelle will have that in it. So we have a surprise for the front suspension that we're keeping a secret until about a week before SEMA this year. But the whole car is nothing but modern technology that's the very best the industry can offer throughout the entire vehicle.
Now,
So,
is this Chevelle going to be displayed at SEMA?
It will. It'll be in the original parts group booth. And
Great, because the Eastwood crew and me, we're doing a Hands on Cars episode out there, as well as just getting tons of cool video. We will come and find you guys wherever you are. Let's stay in touch. I definitely want to see this car. I want to smoke it over, and I want to talk to you about it and get a nice interview with you guys on our little web show and show our viewers and listeners some details about this car. Hopefully we can make that happen, guys.
Yeah, we'll have 3 cars at SEMA this year. We'll have the Whistling Death Chevelle, the Valiant, and a new build that we're just starting is a 65 Comet that we're building for Craftsman Tools.
Very cool. Yeah, I love the old comments. They're again, you can tell what they are, and it wasn't a Fairlane. It wasn't even like a rebodied anything else. They were unique, and I can't wait to see that too. Now I don't know whether it was Kevin or Chad that said something about the old hot rodders from back in the day were Air Force guys, and a lot of that borrowed technology came from the military and came from the Air Force. And guys like Vic Edelbrock Sr. were, had this ball of energy they had to burn up from combat duty, and the legends of all of that stuff translating into what we know as hot rodding today, which is, that's the founding fathers of all that stuff. But I've got a buddy that he served 2 terms in the Navy, and he served on carriers. And what he did was aircraft maintenance, on deck and in some of the hangars, and I can't quote you the names of the carriers that he served on, but obviously with two terms, his experience with maintenance, and it wasn't design, it wasn't construction, but it was simple maintenance. The things I learned from Kevin Reynolds about dealing with aluminum, corrosion aspects of it, fabrication, field fixes, all those types of things, you can't get that experience in just working on cars. So, first of all, Kevin, thank you for your service in the Air Force, but I wanted to ask you specifically, how much of the skills that you picked up in your tenure in the Air Force have translated to you building hot rods?
Oh, a lot, and almost all of it directly. I was the last 4 years I was an aircraft fabricator. And so I dealt with superstructure things and machining parts and welding pretty much any type of metal. We specifically did a lot of titanium and stainless steel and aluminum welding and chrome moly. And if you think about it, with the exception of the titanium, and that's used widely on really high-end race cars. All of those things are skills that you use in building any kind of car, whether it be a tube chassis off-road vehicle or a Pro Mod or a Trans Am style race car or a hot rod. If you look at one of our chassis on our website, all of our chassis are purposely designed and built for the parameters of your hot rod, and that. They aren't inexpensive, but when you get the car, I always like to say, why are you going to build a $30,000 800 horsepower blown Hemi and put it in a $3,000 chassis that's going to do nothing but be a pretzel when you're done with it?
Exactly, yeah.
And we specifically look for, and we're not trying to exclude other craftsmen, but we specifically look for aircraft people from the Air Force and the Navy to work in our shop. We currently have another Air Force and Afghanistan veteran, Keith Grashorn, who was a MH-60 Pavlo crew chief, and he does sheet metal work for us, but he's also our chief of final assembly. And the level of detail that you're held to in working on a military aircraft, and I don't want to scare people flying on civilian airplanes, but it makes me nervous flying on civilian airplanes. The requirements that you're held to, the standards, I should say, that you're held to when working on a military aircraft, we do everything in our power to translate that into a car that you bring to us from inception all the way through final assembly and testing. We have a big, long sheet of how we test every vehicle, and ultimately, we do everything from checking the electrical system and the cooling system and the fuel system and the hydraulics and the brakes. We test all of those things meticulously, all the way up to the same thing the military does with a fighter plane. They go out, pound on it, pull 6G turns and do combat landings to evaluate the landing gear. Well, when your car is all done, if it's a straight line car, we take it out to the track and I drop the hammer on it as hard as I can. And if I break it, I fix it. But if it passed the severe part of our evaluations, then we feel confident that we can hand you your car. And if you want to take it to the drag strip and pound on it, you can do that reliably without worry of breaking a component and having to take it home. Now, we're not saying that there isn't the Monday, Friday part out of the box that you can't, it'll last for a few times and then break. That happens in any industry, but we do our best to make sure that doesn't happen. And all of our parts suppliers know that, the components that we want from their company, we need to be able to stand behind too. And, as drivetrain parts, we exclusively use Moser Engineering axle components and Tremec transmissions and McLeod dual disc clutches and Dynatech drive shafts. And in 10 years of owning our business and testing vehicles like that to almost a military standard, I have had one clutch fail, and it didn't come from McLeod. It came from a supplier that supplied us a McLeod clutch, and ultimately it was that they had pulled the wrong clutch disc off the shelf and sent us one that was spec'd out to a lower horsepower than what we had spec'd out.
Right.
And I should say that McLeod saw that happen and said send it back to us, and they sent us the correct part for free. So...
Well, again, outstanding customer service. And, a lot of people don't realize it, but mass-produced vehicles are just that. They're mass-produced vehicles, and typically OE parts, including paint, those parts and components are designed for minimum tolerances and to barely outlast the warranty. So, that's why when somebody, wants a car built, they go to somebody like you, and they go to the aftermarket for quality components that match the style of their doing. And I don't know, it's the aspect of quality, and this bleeds back into military spec. The aspect of quality has to be factored into a build, and that costs money. It just does, and it costs time. And as you guys know, time is money. And so guys that are listening to this, the reason I'm babbling about this is because there's smack on the internet, and people say, oh, it's a $100,000 car, or it's a checkbook car, or it's this or it's that. There is a perception that the parts grow on trees, and high-end components are expensive to buy, and they're specially built. And I just think that people lose sight of that sometimes, which leads me to a question about style. We talked about style and trends and things like that. I'm just going to ask a question and let you go on it. And I'm not here to bash on anybody and their style or their taste or anything like that. There's a room for everybody. But what do you guys think about rat rods? Giant silent pot. I love it. The Rolodex is flipping, and the politically correct answer is floating to the top. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know if you know it or not, but Kevin and I are in the Chrome Czars Motor Club, and our club was responsible for the 100-car pileup, which was a pretty massive traditional hot rod show for 10 years here in Illinois. And one of the things that we tried to do with that show was really get people to bring out their traditional cars. And as kind of the rat rod thing started coming into popularity, that changed a little bit. My 36 would have been considered a rat rod by the Gray Baskerville definition years ago, but somewhere along the line, the rat rods evolved into basically art cars. You know, they're taking the shittiest body they can find and the, you know, most ugly grease-encrusted 350 that they can find and slapping it into a frame and burger welding everything for shock value. And as an artist, you know, that's cool. You know, I'm all for expressing your creativity. But as a car builder, it's not what hot rodding's about. You know, nobody built cars like that back in the day, and it's not something that we really want anything to do with.
I understand that because there's a responsibility and a safety aspect, and I get it as a trend, and some of the stuff has been really creative, and like you say, from an artistic standpoint, I dig it, but I've seen some cars rolling down the street that probably shouldn't be on the street, and that's all I'm going to say. And for me, the traditional hot rod route it's respecting our forefathers and the people that came before us, and as well as bringing new design elements in, and it's a respectful thing. And in a sense, I guess rat rod is, but I'm personally, I'm kind of glad to see it. I'm not going to say going away, but morphing into maybe blending a little bit more with traditional hot rodding.
The thing I think you could directly make a relationship between what rat rodding has been and the and a couple of factors, you know, the instant gratification that seems to be rampant in our country today, the everybody's a winner attitude where you get a trophy no matter what you do. You know, I think all of those things are coming into play with somebody building a rat rod. What I would like to see people that are building a rat rod, what I would like to see the end result of that being is more of a resurgence of an interest in car culture and putting hands on your own vehicle and building it, but driving people to realize that it's a learning experience and it's only going to be as nice as you are desirous of it to be. And if you want it to be really nice, you might build a rat rod, and that may be your gateway into the car culture. And hopefully that will cause you to be around other people and read articles and maybe take a welding class at the local college and really kind of do the things that guys did back in the 50s and 60s, where if they didn't know how to do something, they went and found someone that did. And that may be hiring a shop like ours, but it may be getting a buddy and making a friend or joining a car club. And there's another guy in the club that's a welder and another guy that's a machinist. And you
Exactly.
Yeah, you maybe have a skill that comes out of you that involves sheet metal work, and pretty soon you've got a car club and you're building each other's cars together. Well,
and then your own personal skill set grows. And, you know, an analogy and a comparison I like to use all the time is that there is no difference technically between a Mako paint job and a Bobby Alloway paint job. And I mean, no offense to either one of those people. The difference is in the execution. And you guys know what I'm talking about. It's the same technology, mechanical or chemical bond. That's the only way paint sticks. It's the follow-through, and it's the artistry involved that differentiate the Mako paint job from the Bobby Alloway paint job or the Trepanier or Charlie Hutton or you guys. Or, you know, it's the level of give a shit. It's the level of want to. And that can be learned. It can be learned and passed on. And Kevin, there's a quote on your About page. I'm going to paraphrase it. I'm always learning. I'm far from a master. I'm far from a master at metalcraft, and I think that's so humble because you guys are arguably masters at what you do. My question to you is this: what would you say to somebody that's just getting started in this field and maybe is a little bit intimidated by some of the high-end stuff that's out there and thinking, man, it's going to take me 25 years to get there? What would you tell somebody that's just thinking about getting started in our hobby or this industry that maybe can empower them?
Well, going to a local car show and maybe asking, taking a look at cars and asking around, maybe look to guys that did the work on the car themselves, looking for that local car club. And there are plenty of car clubs that are really kind of only the car club that just the guys get together for breakfast and then they go sit in a lawn chair behind their car. But there are plenty of car clubs that are working on each other's cars in a garage, and you can learn from that avenue. If you don't have that or you're not interested in that, I actually don't recommend going to the big box schools, as it were. Every community college has a welding class. Think really about what skills do I need to do the part of the car that I want to do. We had classes in our shop over the winter called Hot Rod 101 years ago, and we just got too busy to do it anymore, and it's actually kind of a shame, but we didn't teach you how to weld. We taught you how to lay out your chassis and take measurements to build your own chassis or to modify like a Model A chassis. And I think the biggest thing that I tried to impart in that class was you can buy that MIG welder from Eastwood's and tack everything together, but either go take a welding class and actually learn how to weld, or tack it all together and come to somebody like our shop or go to the Roadster shop or find a local welding shop and get them to do all the finish welding on it, because ultimately you're going to put your son or your wife in the car with you, or you're going to be on the highway and there's a minivan full of nuns behind you, whatever. You want it to be safe, and it's not that the information isn't out there to learn. A Hot Rod 101 class like the one that we taught, Pete and Jake's has a wonderful section of their catalog that teaches you about steering and front suspension geometry. And in a very few pages, there's plenty of books that can be read. There's YouTube videos. But maybe ultimately, put your chassis together or build your car, but be just honest with yourself. I don't know how to do this, but I need to learn, or I don't know how to do this, and I need to go hire someone that does. Because ultimately, you want your car to be very enjoyable. And Eastwood's has plenty of books and manuals in their book section, correct?
And DVDs as well.
Right. Yeah, DVDs. There's 4 ways of learning things, right? You can watch somebody else do it, you can read it, you can mimic someone, or you can be instructed by someone. And pick which way works the best for you, and just be honest about it, and seek out that manner in learning. If you have to go to a college and take a class, and really kind of think about what you're doing. If you're going to make some sheet metal parts for your car, do you really need to go to one of the big box schools to learn sheet metal, or can you go to the local college and take a sculpture class? You can do
exactly.
the same thing, But I definitely encourage a lot of things. Watch the videos, read the manuals, maybe go to the local high school for continuing education or the local college and have a professional instructor. I've been asked to teach people how to weld, and I usually say I can't teach you how to TIG weld in a weekend. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
But if you're going to learn something technical like that, you really need a master welder or a professor at a college that is able to look at how you're welding and make sure you're doing it the right way. Because when I was in college up in Alaska for welding technologies, our instructor told us that you can make a beautiful looking weld that's not a weld at all.
Yeah, there's a thing, it's a saying that is there's no such thing as self-instructing. You don't have the third person perspective on what you're doing. You cannot self-analyze. And to a point you can, and that's an arguable statement. But what you're saying is exactly what I believe, in that you have to reach out and you have to, like you said, be honest and understand that there's no shame in saying, hey, I don't know how to do that. Who would I talk to about learning? Who can teach me this? And these are internal questions to ask. And from that point, once you get the fundamentals, it's just doing the work, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And that's a big problem we've had with a lot of kids coming out of, the famous schools, is that they've taught them a little bit about everything, but they don't come out specialized. And with a few outstanding examples or exceptions, a lot of those kids don't really have the work ethic. And we've discussed this with other shop owners, other people in the industry, and, the kids today coming out of school, I guess they're growing up differently than we did. Kevin and I both grew up in rural areas. I grew up on a farm. And, you had to work. And we have, and particularly with Kevin's military background, you put your nose to the grindstone and you work. And a lot of the kids today, they just don't understand that. And that's a big problem with our industry right now.
Well, I agree, and it's one of my missions is that I hope to stand on somebody's rooftop and shout the fact that you can make a good living as a skilled tradesman. You just have to remind yourself, and we have to get back in the mindset in this country that you can be a successful person without a college degree. You can, as long as there's no shame in getting your hands dirty, and part of that is that work ethic. And when I've hired people in the different shops that I've had or managed or whatever, the first thing I hand somebody is a broom, and that evaluates them for me. And you know what I'm talking about. If they know how to operate that device, then from a mental and a physical perspective, I can probably work with that person. So I'm hoping that shifts, that switches back around, because everything's on a pendulum, and I don't know, but I think there's hope. I'm an eternal optimist. I think there's hope in our industry for that, and it seems like you guys have as much passion about passing these skills on as I do, and as the Eastwood company does. And having said that, you're not far from the Eastwood facility in Chicago, right?
Just about 10 miles, I think.
10 miles. God bless. That's great. What I would like to do is, I don't know if you know this or not, but the Eastwood store in Chicago, there is a classroom environment that's built into the store. Eastwood believes very strongly in the educational aspect of teaching you how to use what they sell. So I'm going up there in August to do a workshop over the weekend, and we're going to do some fun stuff. But I would like to formally invite you guys down somehow, some way, to bring some of your vehicles, and I don't know, man, let's brainstorm. Let's put on a class. Let's put on not a welding class, but let's do something fun like that. What do you think?
I'm more than happy to do that, Kevin. I've actually been because of the quite frankly epidemic of a lack of skilled tradesmen in our industry that spans from the engine builders and the welders. Moroso is constantly looking for welders, to upholstery guys and body shops that do paint, and chassis builders and sheet metal workers and electricians for wiring cars. It's really kind of become an epidemic, and pretty much inspired by Mike Rowe's campaign to get America working again, and get parents and guidance counselors to realize that you can make a good living, and if anybody's read Shopcraft is Soulcraft, and if you hadn't, you should, to realize that you can have a very fulfilled life in working with your hands and your mind every day, and it's not you're just a stupid welder. It's a very technical field, and when you add being a fabricator on top of that, it becomes a monumental amount of information and skill that you have to have. And
and something you can truly take pride in, right?
Right. Yeah. I've been selected to be on a SEMA task force to actually address this problem. And I'll be working with, I haven't seen the actual number of other people on the task force, but I'm sure it'll be an appropriate number of people from a wide variety of the types of skills that are required in the industry, to just try and figure out a 3, 5, and 10-year program to address this, because it really is from coast to coast in Canada to Mexico that we have all these people that are out of work, and we have lots of people with excellent minds and good hands. It's how to put them in the right place and get them going in our industry and fill all these jobs that are needed. And I would be more than happy, and I know Chad would too, to come down to the Eastwood facility here in Chicago and teach a class or just give a seminar. We can talk about that in the coming weeks and get something going. I'd be very interested in that.
Well, let's keep our minds on that, man. I think that would be cool stuff, and I'll talk to my peeps at Eastwood about this and see if we can get some going. At the very least, you guys can bring some of your cars down and show them off, and we'll get some people out there for you. But I wanted to thank you guys, Kevin Tully and Chad Hill with Hot Rod Chassis and Cycle, Addison, Illinois. If you're up in the area, go see the shop. Go and talk to them. If you want work done, well, you're going to get outstanding work from these cats. And thank you guys so much. It's stretched out much longer, and I apologize for it taking time, but you guys are really fun to talk to, and we appreciate you taking the time. Through my life, there have been people that have helped me for no reason other than they're kind people, but there's mentors that I've had. There's people that have helped me. Have you guys got anybody that you'd like to give a shout-out to or a special thanks to?
Oh, most certainly. I would have to say that all the people in the industry that we've met, you end up having a beer with these guys or talking with them on the phone about more than just the industry, and they all, once they meet us and know who we are, and it becomes more of a relationship than just the industry aspect. Nate Toby and Jesse Powell and Jeff Anderson and a dear friend of mine that just passed away, Lenny Hughes, who unfortunately wasn't able to pass on any of his extensive ignition and magneto knowledge to an apprentice. Those guys, they've always believed in us. Josh Russell from Now Potential, that used to work for Ray Vestas, and of course, Chad and I's wives, who put up with all the late nights and going away to the shows and talking on the phone during dinner, and all the things that a small business person ends up experiencing. My mom.
Of course.
Yeah, and my parents were really instrumental in where I'm at. I worked on the farm with my uncle and my dad, and so I really got an appreciation for the old technology, because when 1960 hit our farm, time stopped. So I grew up in the 80s in a farm that was basically 1960. So that combined with the old cars working on with my dad, my mom taught me how to draw. And, they really kind of put me on this path to where I am today.
I think it probably, I would have to say that it speaks volumes that, as we hear O'Hare going over, I think it speaks volumes about, how our story as a shop, and Chad and I as people, and all the guys that have worked or currently work for us, we're this tiny little shop in the Midwest in a town that's known for racing. So there's tons of other shops around us that do phenomenal work, and we've pretty much everybody we've met, yourself, and we get to meet some of our legendary guys that we just hold in high esteem, like Addison. Chad was at SEMA a few years ago and saw Pete Shaporis and Alex Xvidia standing at the dinner that he was at, and walked over and just wanted to say hi and meet him in person. And in meeting them, they knew who we were.
Wow.
It's totally bizarre when that happens, and you're almost taken aback. And to have those kind of people know who you are, and then in the conversation make statements like, "You guys do awesome work. Keep doing what you're doing." Ultimately it starts with your parents or your older brother or whatever telling you that you're doing awesome and keep plugging along. But all of those people have a huge influence on you too, because when there's bills to pay, or the electricity goes out and you can't work for a day because of the storm that just happened or something like that, you think about those people telling you to keep plugging along, and it does. It keeps you going.
And let's face it, this is not an easy thing to do, what you do. And I'm not going to compare myself to you. I've built some cars, but I've been in this industry a long time as a technician. And it ain't easy, folks, but it's definitely worth it. And again, I wanted to thank you guys for spending the time today and sharing of yourselves and your skills and some of the philosophy behind Hot Rod Chassis and Cycle. And keep on doing this stuff, man. Keep on encouraging other people to do it as well. And I can't wait to see some of these cars and show the rest of the world some of these cars that you guys have built out at the SEMA show.
We really appreciate you having us on, Kevin. And we look forward to coming down to Eastwood with. We can probably bring the Cosmic Outcast down, and maybe we'll try to round up a couple of the other local cars that we've built, and bring a couple 3 down.
Yeah, I'll try to bring my dad's. Well, it's mine now, but the 36 Ford that my dad bought when he was in high school.
Oh, cool stuff. Cool. Well, guys, thanks. So much can be seen on the website. Go to hotrodchassisandcycle.com. Look at some of the stuff that these guys have done. And if you're in the Chicago area or the Midwest, it's worth a trip down there. Nice guys. They'll talk your ear off, obviously. But thanks again, guys, and we will connect soon. Until the next time, don't forget, check us out online, eastwood.com. And there's all kinds of contests going on. We're giving away free stuff, and if I ask your question on the air that you email into shoptalk@eastwood.com, you get a $25 gift certificate, and that's pretty cool stuff. So thanks for listening to Shop Talk. I'm Kevin Tates, and we are brought to you by the Eastwood Company. Do the job right with Eastwood.